Hey you! Yeah, you with the pretty face, you! Let me tell you about the biggest travesty of 2022. Give or take if you're a Nintendo fan, honestly. So this whole Nintendo doesn't finish their games thing isn't anything new. A lot of people have already talked about it and made videos on the topic, so I'm not here to say what's already been stated. However, what I don't see being discussed at all is how this whole issue started in the first place. Because I think the answer isn't as easy as just saying, oh, they're trying to scam us, or oh, they're just being lazy, or something like that. And after thinking about it for a long time, like a couple hours, I got it. I think I figured out the exact reason as to why this has been Nintendo's direction to a lot of their games recently. And it didn't just start with the Switch. Instead, it resorts all the way back to May 28, 2015. The day Splatoon first released on the Wii U. The game that laid its claim as one of their biggest franchises, but is also the reason why some of their games have been somewhat lackluster, which includes Mario Strikers Battle League. Probably, I don't know, the game isn't out yet. So get your tinfoil hats ready because I'm the glass half full, and this is why Splatoon was the best and worst thing to ever happen to Nintendo. Let's get one thing out of the way first. Unfinished games isn't just a Nintendo thing. No, it's apparent in almost every gaming studio. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it, but basically with the demand of these games needing to hit a certain deadline, a lot of these studios resort to either have to cut content or make a broken game in order to hit a deadline and slap a $60 price tag on it. Only for consumers to find out how unpolished this game is and then receive a lot of hate for it, and then these studios make DLC for the game, which is just all the missing features that should have been in the game in the first place, but now you gotta pay even more money for it, or the devs will just stop supporting it entirely. Cyberpunk is a great recent example of this. A game that was thought to be the next big hit, like Skyrim or GTA 5, but was dropped down to irrelevancy due to game-breaking bugs and time constraints. Granted, those issues have supposedly been fixed, but the damage has already been done. It's pretty fucked up, and everyone wants it to stop, but looking how things are going now, that ain't happening anytime soon. Which brings us to Nintendo. A gaming company that was notorious for making sure that these games would take as much time as they need in order to be perfect. Breath of the Wild is a great example of this. So if this is the case, then why is Mario Tennis Aces, Mario Golf Super Rush, and Mario Strikers Battle League are going the way they are? Games that have a lot of potential, limited by the lack of content at launch, only to have the game slowly finished months after its release. Your first answer might be that Nintendo rushed them and didn't care, but no, you're actually wrong because these games actually have a lot of charm. Character-specific outfits, animation, stability, performance, and more. All things that are not apparent in rushed games. Because I truly think that these installments were intended to be like this. Intended to lack content with more to come in following months. And like I said before, this is all due to Splatoon 1. So let's talk about the actual topic of this video. If you don't remember, Splatoon 1 was pretty monumental for Nintendo back in 2016. Like, it was their first original series in over 15 years, and it was a third-party shooter at that. And if you haven't noticed, Nintendo doesn't really do shooter-like games. I mean, sure, Star Fox and Metroid have shooter-like styles, but Metroid is mostly a single-player experience, and Star Fox, I mean, when's the last time a Star Fox game even came out? I mean, when's the last time a good Star Fox game came out? Needless to say, this was new and completely different from what we're used to. From the very beginning, the game looked pretty fun and had that classic Nintendo charm that we're all pretty used to by now. However, there were two things that looked really worrying upon release. The first one being, it was on the goddamn Wii U. You could sell the cure for cancer on it and no one would care because, again, it's on the goddamn Wii U! But the second, and much more prominent one, the severe lack of content at launch. And if Splatoon dedicated direct before launch, it was revealed to a story mode that was fairly short, and only 2 game modes, which in hindsight, is pretty lackluster. Honestly though, it only really had 1 game mode because I could be alone on this, but Splat Zones just felt like a glorified turf war. You know, you have to paint like a certain area, and if you cover the more area, then you win. Shut up, I'm right, okay? Not to mention how there is only 5 stages, which for a shooter game is pretty mediocre. I don't know if this is the greatest example, but Mario Kart, a game that's also multiplayer and online focused, has at least 16 tracks in every installment. So having only 5 maps could get pretty tiring. There were some other features here and there, but beyond that, it felt kind of disappointing for a brand new IP. But then they unveiled something quite interesting. The announcement of free content post-launch. Adding new weapons, outfits, quality of life, and most specifically, new stages and game modes. All for free and supposedly sprinkled in throughout the year. Now again, at this point, Nintendo wasn't a stranger to DLC. They've done it before with Smash and Mario Kart, but this one felt different. But this isn't Nintendo trying to scam us, because if they were, then everything would be under a $50 paywall. It's almost like these games aren't technically finished, and we the players get to see the game completed over time. So the game released in May 2015, and wow, it's crazy how something so alive can come from something so dead. Little side note, but big props to Splatoon. Nintendo IPs are so fortified by nostalgia, and the fact that their biggest series have had time to evolve and gain notoriety over the past 20 years. But Splatoon said fuck that, and now it's almost controversial not to say that Splatoon is one of their biggest franchises, especially with its interesting marketing. But the free DLC thing turned out to be the correct decision despite the whole, lack of content at launch. The game had a lot to do. The story mode, while short, was pretty great and had a lot of replayability to it. And some clever level design as well. The setting and world felt super lively and lived in as well, with Booyah Plaza. Wow, that's actually the name of it. I never knew that. You know how you can walk up to others and greet them and share funny dank memes to each other. And don't forget Callie Marie greeting you every single day with no way to skip, and it's so long and you gotta keep tapping A. But we love them as well. And now that you're sucked into this world, even more will be added upon, making you come back every so often to experience a new weapon or a new stage and more. It's pretty ingenious once you really think about it. It gives a great opportunity for the game to stay fresh and exciting. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 updates, no, it was a good 8 to 12 that was spread out over the course of the next year. And you cannot forget Splatfests as well, making people come back every so often to experience a huge event with others as well. And it also happens to be the downfall of all these other games. Wait, you thought I was kidding? So my little headcanon, which also happens to be 100% right, is back in Nintendo Inc., where they handle all their business practices, which is mostly canceling fan games and handing out copyright strikes. They were seeing how great Splatoon was doing with the fans, and let me reiterate one more time, on a dead console, they wanted to try the same thing again in what I call the Splatoon system, or the Spl system for short. No, not working. Oh, okay, I'll just keep calling it the Splatoon system. I mean, it did work the first time, so obviously it'd work again. So the Switch rolls around with Splatoon 2, and they mostly do the same thing again. Splatoon 2 kinda felt like Splatoon 1.5, but it had a lot more content at launch. New stages and returning ones, and all 4 battle modes were coming back. Not to mention a new campaign that was much more interesting than the last. And of course, Salmon Run, which really made the whole experience come together. And finally, the confirmation of more content coming post-launch. And what do you know, Splatoon 2 was a huge hit and sold even more than the last one at 13 million copies. So now 2 games benefited from the Splatoon system. Sure, they're part of the same series, but whatever, we'll move past that. So now Nintendo goes, great, let's try that again, but for a non-Splatoon game. And sure, it could work on paper, or it could really not. Let's talk about ARMS first. Sure, it's not the topic of the video, but it is relevant for the conversation, and no one else wants to talk about it or acknowledge its existence. So I'll volunteer as tribute. First off, it's a new IP, which is great, and we don't have to wait 15 fucking years like last time. It has a story mode, customization, stages, and most importantly for this video, free post-launch content. So basically, it's just like Splatoon, but instead of fighting with guns, you fight with condoms. I've talked about this pretty recently, but all that hype died extremely fast, even with all the post-launch content. When it finally seemed like Nintendo was giving us new IPs and not just the same thing over and over again, but ARMS just didn't deliver. So I guess this post-launch content thing isn't for everyone and should only be used for Splatoon. So fast forward to 2018 when this game was introduced, and then we'd find out the game would have a story mode, character customization, different ways to play, and more coming post-launch. I fucking hate deja vu. It was the exact same song and dance, but this time, it was for an existing series, which is just strange to me. But you know what? Maybe they learned. Maybe Nintendo finally learned from their mistakes and will do this justice. Yeah. Why do I keep lying to myself? Story mode was half-assed, not too many unique and interesting maps to play on, and a lot of the other stuff to do was just grinding out online. I mean, at the very least, it was better than Ultra Smash, but do you know what's also better than Ultra Smash? Literally everything else, even tomatoes, and I fucking hate tomatoes. I think. Not bad. So now we have two games that have suffered from the Splatoon system, which should have told Nintendo, hey, stop fucking doing this, or if you do it better. And instead, they did it again, and 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 here we are. And it looks like we're not stopping anytime soon. And if you noticed, it all happens to a specific genre. Online and multiplayer games. Mario Tennis Aces, Mario Golf Super Rush, and now Mario Strikers Battle League. All games are meant to be played with other people or online. Those games benefit the most from additional content since they're supposed to be played over a long period of time. And also, it'd be really wrong to do this sort of thing for a single player game. Like imagine you're playing Sword and Shield and the post game is coming out later. Like imagine you're playing Metroid Dread and only the first 2 areas are available at launch and the rest aren't. But that's besides the point. Every single Mario sports game, and some other games I guess, haven't been finished, and when they are post-launch, no one seems to give a shit about them anymore, which begs the question, at least for me I guess, why was Splatoon different? So why? Why does this only work for Splatoon? Because the Mario sports games, they've been around for years, and it seems like every installment, they're losing more and more fans. Because in concept, a game that's designed to have longevity should see some success by having updates every couple of months. But this time, that's just not the case. Well, I feel like there's a lot of obvious and not so obvious reasons. First off, Splatoon being a new thing really helped it back in 2015. There was no other third-person shooter on a Nintendo or gaming system like it at the time, meaning this was the only way to experience something like it. Unlike the Mario sports games, where if you don't like the new installment, you could go ahead and play it past entry if it's available to you. So why didn't ARMS work? Well, one could argue that eventually there'd be a better fighting game that would overtake its spot, but there's a bigger reason. And more specifically is why all these other multiplayer games failed. They never had a sense of community and bringing everyone together. Splatoon is able to really hook you in with its intriguing world full of characters and locations that really bring it to life. Of course, ARMS or the Mario sports games tried doing the same thing, but there is something missing. And that something that Splatoon has and the others don't, well, for one, it's a hub world. That hub world is really underappreciated because in my opinion, it's the single thing that really brings this game together. Walking around and seeing people share outfits, Miiverse messages, and just interact was always nice to see whenever you want to take a break from the online. While those other games just have a boring ass menu where it's treated more like a single player experience and not a multiplayer one. This is also emphasized by the absolute beauty of Splatfests. It was so simple in concept, but those t-shirts, those concerts, man, it made the game feel so alive. And subsequently, that post-launch content didn't feel like something the developers forgot to put in, but something in-universe that was added in naturally and in real time. Now that is how you do post-launch content. Adding characters or stages that should have already been in the game in the first place isn't how you grow an online community. It's how you kill it, honestly. Let's also compare what kind of post-launch content happens between one another. Mario Tennis Aces released with 16 characters and 8 stages, and ended with 30 characters and 8 stages, which was actually the biggest problem of the game, but whatever, we had to see Luma instead. While Splatoon started with 5 stages and 2 game modes, and ended with 17 stages and 4 game modes, and like a bunch of other stuff I don't have time to list off. Which, like, that's how you do post-launch content. Like, God, Tennis Aces, why can you get that right? And look at that, before the game even launches, we're confirmed to have free post-launch characters. Look, I want to be excited and not pessimistic about a game that's not even out yet. Like, God, like, do you know what my name is? But it seems to be following a lot of past trends. Sure, you can tell me that these games are made by different companies, but I feel as though it's not far-fetched to say that these developers looked at the amount of success Splatoon 1 and 2 had and decided that they can do the same. Like, no! Make a fully compatible game that at first doesn't seem to need additional content. Build a community with either some form of interacting with other players online, that doesn't include battling them, of course, and do some special events, give or take, honestly. And then do some post-launch DLC content. And that's exactly why Splatoon is one of the most beloved Nintendo franchises in recent years, with a trilogy on the way, and why everything that tried to copy it after was left to die. I mean, admittedly, these games are pretty okay to good. I just thought this would be a lot more climactic and cool. I hope I didn't just ruin it. And if you somehow think I'm delusional for thinking this is all connected or something, yeah, you're completely right. I'm a Nintendo fan. What do you expect?